To just try some let me speak and we see if invite can work. We're just trying something, so consider speak, accept, and see if it can. You can hear me, accept the invite to speak and try to speak, and we see if we can.
Yeah, hello?
If you can hear me, please respond.
Yes, so I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah?
Yes, Kaskazin, I can get you loud and clear. I don't know if you can hear me as well.
Good. So I think, Simba, the issue is with your phone. I think you can try to restart, try to join again. But Mr. can also be part of the conversation, talking about Africanism and what it means to the 21st youth, and really what it means to our socio-economic and political development moving forward as Africans. Just a background, the expression of Pan-Africanism come into the beginning of the 12th century when Henry Sylvester of Trinidad and William Edward Dubois of the United States of America, these guys were both nascent but Americans, used it several Pan-African congresses that were mainly attended by scholars of African descent too, and that's Pan-Africanism started coming up so much. So again, you notice that even Pan-Africanism and African nationalism really were concepts coined by Africans that were not based in Africa. So, years later on, centuries later on, Pan-Africanism and African nationalism are still things that are talked about. And usually we see that when you talk about these two concepts, it's like every African should be a Pan-African if they believe in the development of Africa or the unity of Africa. But then the main question is, does the African today, the young African today, understand these concepts, and do they mean anything to them? And they see them to achieve development personal level, but also at level. We see many, including our president here, Museveni, how he is a Pan-African. When you look at the context of Pan-African, you see that leaders say one thing and do the other. In your personal opinion, I've lost Simba back. In your personal opinion, say about Pan-Africanism and what does it mean to you? And as a young person, do you see it as a way for our development at a personal level, but also at a country level, social, economic, and politically?
Yes, Kaskazini.
Yes, I didn't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
First of all, that is a very powerful and fundamental question to begin with in the space. It is very large. I don't know how you had pre-planned it, but that is a very large question to begin with. I don't know if I can even remember all of it, but I'll try to answer to my level best and even better than that. What does Pan-Africanism mean to the, you say to the youth? I think that's what you said.
To the African youth. Africa. Yeah, my last question was because I gave a background of what Pan-Africanism is and where it all came from. So my last question that was directed to you was, you as Ham, from where you sit and see the world, and you know how you've grown up down here in Africa. When was the first time you heard about Pan-Africanism? And then what does it mean to you as an individual, as a young African? And do you see hope in Pan-Africanism moving forward for you as a person, but also for our country, East Africa, and Africa at large?
Okay. I cannot pinpoint the exact moment that I was exposed to maybe the idea of Pan-Africanism and what it entails. But maybe I used to just maybe see images of people like Nkrumah, Nyerere, Mandela, the ANC top leadership then, the Ramaphosa, who is the president now. And I think maybe we were told, or what we were learning is that they were advocating basically for a better Africa that we could all have, a better Africa politically, a better Africa economically, and all these things. That was my first, I think, exposure to Pan-Africanism. So I don't know if that answers your first question. Your second question,
it does, yeah.
Okay. Your second question was, what does it mean to African youth? And then I think something about the future. Was it along those lines? I want to get everything straight.
Yeah. So my next question was,
yes,
to you as an individual, as a young African, from where you sit and see the world, what does Pan-Africanism mean to you? Do you see it as a hope or a way for development at a personal level, but also for the country and Africa at large?
Okay. Do I see it as a hope? Okay. Africanism. Personally, okay. Let me just give it to you straight. Let me just give it to you straight how it is, because it seems that's how you want it. Let me just give it to you straight how it is. Frankly, no. I do not believe in Pan-Africanism and what it entails. The problem, in my personal opinion, the problem of the black man currently, for those who don't know me who are listening in, I am black, born and raised in Kampala, Uganda. I've lived in some different places all across the world. So I'm not a Mzungu, I'm a Ugandan. But
maybe you could give us an official introduction. I know you, but people who listen to the YouTube podcast probably will need to know who is speaking, and also Simba.
Okay. I go by the names of Humphrey Vianney Lumumba. I'm a young guy, 24 years old. Like I've said, born and raised Kampala, Uganda. I'm still a student doing my bachelor's. From Southeastern University, Florida. Well, apart from school, I also deal in some businesses. We have to keep the capitalism machine moving. So I indulge myself in my free time in some businesses here and there. Bought some treasury bills. in African states like my home state, Uganda. So, yeah, I have some other businesses as well, but that's what mostly is keeping me moving. Yeah, so for those who don't know me, that's me. I'm not a celebrity or anything of that sort. So I think let's get back on board. So, Cheswa, your question: what does Pan African mean to me, and what does it mean for the African continent for development? All right.
Wait, hello, Mr. Ham.
Yes.
Hey, we lost you a bit there. Yeah. The question means to you, and what hope lies in it for our country, Africa at large, and African youth.
Okay. Okay. Let's get straight into it. Let's not waste any more time. Personally speaking, I do not think there is such a thing as Pan-Africanism. There is no such thing. I think it's more of a facade. It's more of a facade. It's more of something we talk about. We like to be associated with. We like to admire it, like some sort of euphoria environment. But the truth is, the actual ground, we do not have any sort of form of Pan-Africanism. So the next question you're going to ask is why. As I said, let's get into it. In my point of view, the black man all across this continent, Africa, and the black man in everywhere he lives, be it the United States of America, be it Canada, be it South America's Brazil, and all those states. I think that's majorly where the black man lives. We don't have large populations of the black man in Asia. Maybe black Indians. I don't know if you can consider them black, but we have Indians. We have Papua New Guinea, it's a country above Australia. We have some black people. Population maybe 1 million. Shouldn't be above that. But the reason Pan-African reason that does not exist is this: we do not have a common identity as black people. We do not have a common identity as black people. Okay? The black man does not have a common identity to identify with across countries, across regions, okay, across so many divisions. Okay. When by the time the white man arrived on this continent, these days people refer to them as colonizers or missionaries or whatever. But by the time the white man got to this continent in around the 1800s, maybe some in the 1700s late years, the black man used to live in small groups of organizations, which in modern day times we refer to as tribes. Okay. You can take your pick: Yoruba, Igbo, Sosa, Baganda, Acholi, Dinka, Kikuyu of Kenya. So all those are different tribes. So these were the organizations of groups. The modern day word we would use to describe them would be countries. Okay, so these tribes would have been countries, but they were very small in terms of organization, in terms of population. Okay, in comparison to the countries which were there then in the 1700s and 1800s, which would have known as France, Great Britain, and all those things. Just to give you a small comparison, when the British came here, the Basoga tribe, which lives in eastern Uganda across the Nile, had a population of 640,000. Okay, that was the highest population of a tribe in Uganda. Okay, today the Basoga should be around 4 million. Okay, I want you to compare this to the United States, where the white population of the United States in modern day today should be around, the total population of the US is 365 million. So white people should be around 150 million, around there, give or take, give or take. Don't hold me to these figures. You can Google and then get the accurate figures. So what does this mean? What does this mean? Why am I taking you on this long journey to try and set up my point? So what happens that the white man came on this continent? You know that whole process: colonization, slavery, independence. Just recently, the 1960s, around that, and they left. What happens that the black man on this African continent continues to still live in these small organizations, which did not ever evolve to grow in size to larger organizations like those I've spoken about. Okay, so what happens that after colonization, they gave us independence. Okay, they gave us independence, and then we formed what we would call countries, modern day countries. You have the Uganda, you have Nigeria, Rwanda, Zimbabwe, whatever. Take your pick. But what happens is that you have a country like Uganda, which has 45 tribes, a total of 45 tribes and 54 ethnic groups. Okay, you have clans which even outnumber other tribes. Okay, I think there's just for example, there's a clan in Uganda Kingdom, which is part of the Uganda tribe, which can have like 500,000 people today, but there can be a whole tribe in Uganda which has 200,000 people, just for comparison. So what happens is that because the African man up to modern day times, we still live, President Museveni quoted it and then said, most Africans live in pre-capitalistic times. So because majority of the black man lives in pre-capitalistic times, we continue to have old identities of the 1800 and the 1700 of what we refer to as tribes. Now, I want to give people now a new thought process, a new way of thinking. We cannot have countries because a country has to have a common identity. I don't know if you people have engaged with citizens from across the globe. If you meet like a Chinese and he comes from China, they generally you generally associate them in the same way. Eh? If you hear a Chinese, you imagine how his skin color is, how he looks like, and you know his behavior. If I tell you an American, regardless of race, regardless if he's African American, regardless if he's a Latino, regardless if he's white, regardless of all those things, there's a certain way he behaves. He has a common identity. There is meaning to being American. There's meaning to being British. Okay? So all these things. So what happens in Africa? We have never sat down and defined what it means to be a Ugandan. We have never sat down and defined what it means to be a Kenyan, what it means to be a South Sudanese or a Sudanese, a Nigerian. So what does this mean? I told you guys, we're getting into it. I hope you guys, I don't want to lose you guys. Stay with me.
We're following.
We're in the thick of it. So, what happens is this. First thing, when you are making a country, you need the fundament of the country. The first thing is what we call a centralized political organization. The centralized political organization is basically the center of power, how it is structured, how it flows, and it works for the betterment of the citizens of that country. You could think of the United Kingdom. Their organization, basically, you have a monarchy, a king or queen sits at the throne. You do not question the king or queen. No matter what you do, who you are, don't question the king or queen. Then you have the prime minister. Then you have parliament. Then the people vote MPs who go to parliament. And you have then the MPs in parliament vote the prime minister. That's the central political organization. Okay? So so if so this is for the UK, just to be exact, for the UK. But if you look at the UK before they came to Africa, you notice that all of them are white. Basically, majority of them belong to one similar race. Okay, most of them are white. They could have smaller differences. That these ones are Scottish, these ones are from Wales, but they are very, very minimal. Basically, all of them are white, and then you follow the organization, that is, follow the rule of the Queen. You do not question the Queen. So that is how it is. So if a child is growing up in the United Kingdom, you know that the Alpha and Omega in the UK is the Queen. Queen Elizabeth, may her soul rest in peace, is the Alpha and Omega. You do not question whatever happens. If the Queen has said we go left, you go left. Okay? You can talk about America, it has a different situation. I think you know about that. But coming back to Uganda, Pan African, what does it mean? So when you form a country like Uganda that has 45 tribes, meaning in these 45 tribes, all of them, they had their centralized organizations. You have the Baganda in central Uganda, they have their own king, okay? And they have their own way of doing things. You have the Basoga who don't have a king, but they have chiefdoms. And the king, the person who rules the kingdom, it's based on, you shift it between the different chiefdoms, while in Uganda, you don't question the king. It's similar to Britain. Then you have the Banyankole, then you have the Acholi, you have the Iteso, you have so much. So what happens that when you form a country called Uganda and you have these 45 tribes, you form a country called Uganda, 45 tribes, the citizens of that country, what identity do they reside in? What identity do they take up in? Okay? Do they take up the identity of the government of the day? When Uganda got independence, the government at the time came from northern Uganda. They were mostly Acholis, but the government was placed on Uganda land in southern Uganda near Lake Victoria, at the base of Lake Victoria. So the citizens coming up, the people growing up, what do you base their identity on? Do you base it on Uganda? Do you base it on the Acholi, the government of the day? What do you base it on? Because the country needs to have one common identity. Without one common identity, you do not have cohesion to move the team forward, to move the country forward. Okay? And a small thing you can think about, think of the armed forces. You are making an army, okay, which is supposed to be representative of all of these groups of people and supposed to represent them, protect them in case of an emergency. Okay, what happens? So what happens is when one group of these people, let us say, they want to break away from the country, they want to seek independence. Okay, okay. Let me just say it as it is. When the British were making the country formed as Uganda, they did not take so much deliberate work to incorporate what we call the Rwenzururu, I think, kingdom, which is in southwestern Uganda, in modern day, I think, Kasese. I don't know if I've got that right. You guys will verify if I apologize if I got it wrong. So Kasese district of modern day Uganda, you have the Rwenzururu kingdom. So it was not incorporated into what we call the Republic of Uganda by the British. Okay, so what happens is that ever since the 1900s, these Rwenzururu people have been trying to break away from Uganda. Okay, so in 2016, in Uganda we have a national army called the UPDF, Uganda People's Defense Forces. So at that time in 2016, the chief of defense forces was a Munyankole, General David Moz. His deputy was called Mbadi. General Mbadi, right now is the CDF General Mbadi. So ask yourself, if these people want to the Rwenzururu kingdom, so what happens is that General Mbadi, who was the deputy CDF then and is now the CDF now, was from that kingdom. He's from that tribe that wants to break away from the Republic of Uganda. And I want to tell you, the government of Uganda will not allow any form or group of people to break away from the composition that we know as Uganda. So what happens in the situation in 2016 whereby the CDF is from that kingdom, so basically he's in charge of the guns of the country, and then that part of the country wants to break away. The commander-in-chief of the country, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, sent the army under command of Lieutenant General Peter Elwelu, who comes from northern Uganda, to bring that whole place to book. It was a military operation in which over 100 people died. But it was the whole purpose of the operation was to keep Uganda as a hold, to keep Uganda going forward. Okay, so ask yourself this question: if the president had sent the deputy CDF then Mbadi, do you think Mbadi would have had it in his stomach to go and kill his own people in Kasese to keep Uganda together? Would he have done that? I personally go with the answer: no, he wouldn't have been able to. So if he wouldn't have been able to, what does this mean for the rest of Uganda? Okay, so I don't know if you guys are trying to get the picture that I'm trying to paint.
We're following, and I've been noting down some questions that I think we follow.
Okay.
But we're getting you.
Okay. So the whole point is this, coming back to Africanism. We do not have a common identity as Black people. Most of us continue to live in pre-capitalistic times. We continue to live in the 1800s and the 1700s, yet we claim to be in 2022 and 2023. Okay, these identities that we have: I am a Yoruba, I am a Igbo, I'm a Hausa, I am an Acholi, I am a Msoga, I am a Samia. These identities, they are very, very small in size, very small in number, and these identities cannot, if we are being serious, they cannot face the mighty United States. They cannot face Russia. They cannot face Putin and things like that. Okay, so if we want to create nations, the first thing is fundamentally, the first thing to create is to have a common identity as a country. If not as a country, to have a common identity as Black people. Okay, if you notice, Northern African countries, the Libyas, the Egypts, they are a bit more progressed in terms of development, infrastructure, the economics. And if you see, they generally do not identify with Sub-Saharan Africa. They generally don't identify with us because, of course, the different color. Most of them are Muslims. They are Arabs. They identify more with the Middle East. That is the Dubai, the Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Qatar, Yemen. They identify more with them. They see that their identity is closer to them than closer to us, the Black people of this continent. So if we are being serious about Pan-Africanism, yes, if we are being serious about it, fundamentally the work that needs to be done, we need to build up a common identity as Black people of this earth. Okay, Peter Obi is a presidential candidate in Nigeria. He stood for Nigerian election. He petitioned, so I won't talk about if he won or lost. But one of the quotes he likes quoting, which I think maybe also goes into this conversation we're having, is that he likes saying, "There are Nigerians, but there is no Nigeria or anywhere on earth." He's saying if you go to a map of Africa and look for Nigeria, Nigeria is not there on the map, but they are Nigerians. So it's the same thing. I'll say they are Kenyans.
But what's that supposed to mean?
It's basically drives my point. Okay, it's basically trying to say is that Nigeria as a country is basically working for one or two groups of people or three groups of people. Basically, for those who don't know Nigeria well, if you're born a Yoruba and an Igbo, Those are in Nigeria. Those are just 2 tribes in Nigeria. Nigeria has, I think, over 70 tribes, something like that. But those are one of the 2 tribes in Nigeria. If you're born a Yoruba and an Igbo in Nigeria, basically from the time you're born, you're going to have an advantage over other tribes. You're going to get basically better education. You're going to have better opportunities in life. You're going to have better connections, better networking, just because you're born out of those 1-2 tribes. Because those 1-2 tribes, either they're in charge of the business community or they're in charge of running the country, the state, in government jobs, parastatals, government contracts, the army, air force, all those things. So if you're born a Yoruba and Igbo in Nigeria, you're going to have an advantage. So you imagine you're born, I'm using air quotes right now. So you imagine you're born into one of the lesser tribes of Nigeria. How do you compete with these other tribes? The truth is you can't. You have to work almost 4 times as hard to get the things that other people have. So it all boils down that we do not have a common identity as the people of Nigeria and as Black people of this continent. So that's what Peter Obi means when they say that they are Nigerians, but there's no Nigeria anywhere on earth. They are Kenyans, but there's no Kenya anywhere on earth. They are Ugandans, but there's no Uganda anywhere on earth. They are South Africans, but there's no South Africa. So that's what that point means. So I don't know if you guys are quoting me. So, in my opinion, there is no Pan-Africanism because the fundamentals, the first principles, do not exist. I don't know if I'm overstretching this too long. I don't want to talk too much. I want other people to talk as well. But because our people, our population continues to live in this rudimental and, personally, in my opinion, backward identities of tribes. If you look at the voting patterns across the continent, when people go to vote, they go and vote their tribesmates without even thinking about if this guy will do the job, or campaign promises, looking at the guy's background. You could be a thief, you could be a murderer, you could be a rapist, but because you belong to a certain tribe, we belong to a certain tribe in a certain country, people will vote for you regardless. So how can we use Pan-Africanism to build this continent to go forward when we have when our people, our Black people on this continent are thinking along those lines? So, in my opinion, Pan-Africanism is just something we like to be associated with, we talk about, but the truth is, on the ground, it's non-existent. It's not there. Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. Very, very interesting submission you've made, and I hoped William could, counter that, because he, I think, has some quite different opinions. One of the things that you mentioned that I found quite interesting, when you talked about the fact that we lack those fundamentals, and the other races seem to have them. But then, don't you think that is the lack of organization and building those building fundamentals? Don't you think it's caused by our education system and the fact that Africans didn't get a chance to tell their story? Africans didn't get a chance to build their education system. And even as we speak here, we speak in a foreign language. Don't you think those are the factors that weaken the strength of Pan Africa?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Education system. From the time of independence, when most African countries got independence, we have never sat down to review these things, the things I've just spoken about. And most of us, we didn't, in most African countries, sub-Saharan Africa, I like referring to it as Black Africa instead of sub-Saharan. but it's the same thing. But in Sub-Saharan Africa, when we got independence, we never made our own education systems. Okay, we never sat down and made our own system. For those in Uganda, our education system, we refer to it as UNEP, which in full means Uganda National Examinations Board. Okay, you sit for exams in S6, S4, and then P7 primary living examinations. But we have never sat down to we never made our own education system. Our colonizers, our colonial masters, for Uganda it was the British. They are the ones that made this system. They wrote it all the way from the UK, and they brought it, and then up from 1962 up to today, we have never even outdated it or tried to change it. So, but even if we change it or don't change it, it does not answer those questions. Okay, it does not answer those questions. Maybe an example to look at would be Uganda's neighbor to the left, which is the Republic of Rwanda. There was a young man then. He's very much older than all of us here, but there was a young man then who grew up as a refugee in Uganda. He grew up to the high command of the Ugandan army in the 1986, but he was originally from the Republic of Rwanda. So what happened is that he saw bad things happening to his country, and then he decided to take up arms, and then he went and liberated his home nation. It was so bad the way the colonial masters had separated indigenous people on their land, that is the Tutsis and the Hutus. They had separated them so much that I think you know what happened in 1994, where there was a genocide and they killed each other. For those who have been able to who have been able to go to Rwanda and see what has happened on the ground, it's really horrible stuff. But that just shows you how the white man shaped our identity. But the beautiful things that when this young man, who is now an old man, Foster General Paul Kagame, His Excellency the President of the Republic of Rwanda, is that first of all, for some background, Kagame is related to the royal family, which used to run Rwanda before the colonizers came. But when he took over as president,
The Tutsi royal family.
Yes, he's related to them. Once he took over as the president after he liberated the country, it was about to say military coup, but he liberated the country. One of the first things he did, what I call the fundamentals, he removed, he banned tribes and he banned the kingdoms. Okay, these days it's legal to say Tutsis and Hutu in Rwanda. He banned that. He banned the kingdoms, which he himself comes from, but he banned it because as a long-term plan and as a long-term thinking, because he was thinking in the long term, he saw that if he was to build this country from the nation up, it needed to take on a new identity as Rwandese, speaking a common language, whatever it is, whether English or what, whatever it is, but speaking a common language which will take the country forward. And he has embedded that into the education system, which has been taught in Rwanda from 1994 up to today. So these days, if you talk to people of Rwandese origin, people in Rwanda, it's a very uncomfortable topic, but they generally don't identify with the old identities of Tutsis and Hutus. So that just, so Mr. Paul Kagame continues to give us lessons on how the black man can move forward. So going back to your question of the education system, so I would say Paul Kagame has done the right thing, though to completely judge it well, it needs a lot of time to see the effects it would have. Things like PK leaving power would have to happen to see how people react with each other once he has left state power, how the environment would change, how does the state move forward. But then also, I don't think what happened in Rwanda can just be copied and pasted in all other African nations, because you need to look at all different factors that go on. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. And I just, if you just joined us, we're talking about the topic up there. You see, my brother Tony, he could actually come in and also share what your thoughts are. But Ham here made very interesting submissions about his perspective on Africanism, which I think is a very, very important perspective to think about. Because I feel like today we like to go with the flow and we want to go with what sounds nice and what sounds okay. And we need to question this thing and ask ourselves, is this really working? And if it's not really working, why isn't it working? But if we keep pretending that it is working, yet we don't see results, then we just keep fumbling with it moving forward. And before I ask my next question, I want to just get perspective here. According to Kwame Nkrumah, he believed that Pan-Africanism was a movement for cooperation between all people of African descent, the political union of an independent Africa. And when you shared, there's something you mentioned about, you talked about it in a lengthy way, but if I understood you, you were talking about having a center of gravity or form of leadership. You talked about the Queen and how all these nations under the Queen see her as their leader, and she controls the center of gravity and gives them direction. Do you think, or are you trying to say that Africa faces a challenge of having solid leadership? It's one of the reasons why we don't see
Cheswa, could you please repeat that question?
The Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, and they talked about how all the nations that have been under Queen Elizabeth saw her as their supreme leader, and they subscribed to her leadership. Whatever Queen Elizabeth said happened in all the nations. Let's just say Arab nations where you see monarchs. But my question then to you is, are you trying to say that one of the reasons why we don't see Pan-Africanism working or Africans uniting, is it the absence of solid leadership, according to you, or is it still something that is driven by external forces like neocolonialism?
Mm-hmm.
So is it a challenge of our own failure to lead ourselves, have solid leadership, or is it colonialism that keeps us divided, according to you? Just before you answer, we have other guys that are here. This is an open conversation. We're talking about Pan-Africanism, and we're giving our different perspectives of how it is. And Han here just shared a very interesting perspective of what he thinks about Pan-Africanism and why he thinks it's still failing to work for Africa today. Feel free to request to speak. I see Tony, I see my brother Sutsuji, and I also see Stella now. Guys, during the conversation, let's share our thoughts about Pan-Africanism. So, I don't know if you've got my question, or should I?
You could repeat it for all our listeners now.
Yeah. So, when I asked, you mentioned that Africa is one of the reasons why Pan-Africanism seems to not work here, and why we fail to unite is because, actually, no, he didn't say it like that. He talked about Queen Elizabeth and how Queen Elizabeth has been controlling or leading more than one nation. And all these nations subscribe to her leadership, and all these nations see her as their supreme leader. And he says that's one of the factors that enables these countries to move in the direction that they are consistently and also unite with ease. My question to Ham was that our failure to succeed through Pan-Africanism or to unite, is it our failure to provide solid leadership for ourselves, or is it factors of neocolonialism that keep us divided and in this state of confusion? You get it now?
Yes, I've got you. basically saying what is keeping us divided? This neocolonialism, or basically we are failing to band together. I cannot pinpoint which one is more, which one has had more effects, but I think both of them have had effects. The first one, failing to band together. Yes. For some reason, yes.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, I don't know why. The black man remains the only race on earth which fails to unite. Okay, which fails to unite, whether it's on a small individual level, on the village level, or even in on a national level, parliament level, army level. For some reason, I really do not know why, but the black man is the only race in which has failed to unite. Okay.
But don't you think that's constructed by the white man for the African man to fail to unite?
I don't know. I don't know if it goes to the white man, but of course, since we are living in an Africa after colonialism, you could say it has a small effect. For those who don't know, Vuzi Tendebayo is a venture capitalist and a businessman in South Africa. But he said something recently which is important. He said, when we were fighting for independence in the 60s and 70s, the ANC in South Africa, the Obotes in Uganda, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya, when we were fighting for independence, for some reason, the white man only allowed one seat at the table for the black man. Okay, so with apartheid, the seat at the table was only for Nelson Mandela Madiba. Okay, in Uganda, the seat was for Milton Obote. In Kenya, it was for Jomo Kenyatta. Generally, for only one black person. So there was only one seat at the table. Yet there were like maybe 8 white men. So, what happened is, of course, this person negotiated independence. We were able to get independence, and then we got independence, and then they left. But Vuzi says this sort of arrangement, it seemed to have had deep effects to the black man everywhere on earth, even those who were already living in America, because by 1960 there were a lot of black people in America, but it seemed to have had a very large effect on the black man. The effect talks about is that what happens is that when a black man tries to come up, when a black man tries to organize himself, try to beat off the dust, to beat off the termites and the bed bugs biting him, and tries to clean up his suit, clean up his shoes, and organize himself to make a way. And what most black people don't understand, that when a black man makes a way where there has been no way for all of us, he makes a way for all black people, irrespective of whether we may use that road or not. But for some reason, the black population, the black people, is that when this black man makes a way, we ourselves, we fight that man. We are the first ones to bring him down. Okay, we pull him and bring him down instead of uplifting him. We don't remember that he's making a way where us we have not been. Okay, for those who know, Jay-Z is a rapper. He's the first billionaire rapper in the US. He's black. He didn't go to school. He used to sell drugs. But what happens is that when Jay-Z started rapping, he realized he can be paid $100,000. This is money going back to early 90s. So as a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, 25 years, you're being paid $100,000 to sing on beats. Okay, and rap music remains one of the few ways that a black man can make it out of the hood in America, but also Africa, by the way. So what happens that he used to be paid 100K, 200K. which he didn't have, and was honestly a lot of money. You're coming from the projects, you're coming from the Bronx, New York, you're coming from poverty. You're coming from the Google definition of poverty, a background of scarcity. When we Google poverty, your picture comes up. This was Jay-Z. So he was coming from this background, paying 100K to rap on beats. That's why they are called rappers. But what happened is that after some time, he realized that for every 100K he would make $1 million for a white person who is seated in a bedroom enjoying AC all the way in California. California is on the western coast of the United States. Jay-Z is this side on the eastern coast in New York rapping. He's getting his 100K, which is good money, sweet money. But someone in a boardroom in AC is getting $1 million. So he realized that, yes, this money is good, but you can make more money if you are in charge of distributing your own music. So basically, you make a label, you own your masters, you own your rights, you distribute your own music. It literally opened Jay-Z's mind, like, hey, this is how it is. So Jay-Z, he got other artists, he got young proteges, the Kanye West, the Pharrell, for those who know, signed them into a label, and then they were able to make their own music. That's why in modern day times, today, 2023, we see Jay-Z has a net worth of 1.5 billion United States dollars. Okay? Because he was able to do this. But he realized that once he did this, and then he would share the knowledge and information to his fellow people in the rap community, instead of taking up his advice, listening, be like, yo, thank you for this, you've opened our eyes, we didn't know this, we didn't know this was possible, we didn't know we could do this, we're now taking larger paychecks. Instead, the rappers, for those who listen to rap music, we refer to them as mambo jumbo rappers, the 21 Savages and all, they would instead insult him and then say, this guy is just stupid, what are you saying? A white man is giving $100,000 to rap, and you're complaining, you're saying that's little money. So anyway, that's the whole point. So it goes back to what Vuzi said, is that when we're negotiating for our rights, the white man only allowed one black person to have a seat at the table. So for some reason, we think that there can only be one of us. If we see a billionaire like Aliko Dangote, we think there should only be one Aliko Dangote. What we don't know, that Dangote is providing jobs to millions of people in Nigeria, in Ghana, even in America, Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya. We don't think of that. And what we don't know is that once you work closely to Aliko Dangote, man, you're coming up. You're going to be the next one. You're absorbing all that knowledge, all that knowledge, all that infrastructure, all that, and then you're going to be the next one. Okay. Instead, we want to bring him, want to bring them down. So so that's those are from Vuzi's notes. So I don't know if they answer your question of neocolonialism, but yeah.
I think I get you. Really, in a sense that one of the reasons that keeps us divided and failure for us to have solid leadership, the reality that we're not comfortable with the reality that many of us can succeed and be good at stuff. If I win or if I become a billionaire, most of the times I want to be the only billionaire you get, and it comes from how things were in the colonial time. Yet, if we had more black billionaires or more black people doing things at a great level and us supporting ourselves, that can be a solid block for community. But also, that goes to explain to you why we don't support our strong leaders, because you mentioned some strong leaders from the Western world, and you notice that here, for example, last year we lost a really great leader, John Pombe Magufuli. But you're going to notice that some of our own were fighting Magufuli, and yet one of the things that he did so well was to stand up against the white, supremacy, and saying that we can also have a mind of our own, legacy of our own, forge a future on our own. Ourselves in that regard.
Yeah.
So in business, in leadership, that support of our own, and when someone is trying to rise, or people are trying to rise, we're going to tear one down, and that whole confusion keeps us behind. But before we get back to that, let me just make sure William can now speak. William, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can actually get you very loud and clear.
Finally, finally.
Yeah.
So we're getting a bit late, but William, can you introduce yourself and just like what Ham has been doing on the side, and also just a brief understanding
Um,
of what Pan Africanism means to you, and if you
yeah.
feel that there lies hope within Pan Africanism for the African youth today, in terms of our economic development, social development, but also political development at large.
Uh, okay. My my name is William Simba, and I come from Kenya, in the coastal town of Malindi. I'm currently a third year student at the University of Kibabi, pursuing a bachelor's degree in law and criminal justice. I'm also a Pan Africanist. So, according to my understanding of Pan Africanism, actually, Pan Africanism means the the act of Africans for Africans, regardless or irrespective of where or which location a person is, provided that he is an African. And by African, we not only mean the black race. So anyone can identify himself as African. And the history of Pan Africanism, as as we all know, it dates back from the 1900, where the Africans in diaspora decided to come together to unite all Africans. So, according to me, Pan African lives, and Pan Africanism is there, and there is hope in Pan Africanism only if we decide to follow what our founders and the pioneers and founders of Pan Africanism really meant. We can achieve a lot. Uh, Freddy, can you hear me?
William, I can hear you, but I think Kaskazin is having a few connection issues. But you can go on. You can go on with your submission.
Okay, thank you. So, uh, if we Africans, because if if you are keen and look at how this world is run, starting from the influential people.
Please, I lost you at the point when you said you're in third year. Could we start from there again, please? Sorry.
Uh, okay, okay. Yeah, as I was saying, I'm a third year student at the University of Kibabi in Kenya, pursuing a bachelor's degree in law and criminal justice. I'm also a Pan Africanist. I really, I really love being African and anything associated with African. Yeah. So, as the as the guest speaker maybe for today's topic, what Pan-Africanism really means to the African youth in the 21st century. For we to understand, because over time, the the meaning of Pan-Africanism has changed. So, first to get a better understanding actually of what Pan-Africanism really is, we need to start from its history actually, of which, as we all know, Pan-Africanism started early in the early 18th century, where a group of black men in diaspora. I think the first meeting was conveyed in London by Sir Williams. Actually, they had a different agenda from what we have today, and the agenda has been changing over time. So, like, when they first met, it was because they wanted to articulate their grievances, their suffering, and from the whites. So that is what Pan Africanism meant at that time. But as time went by, the likes of Sir Marcus Garvey changed it to now accommodate all black people in the universe, regardless of where one came from. And I think, that was that became the main agenda for long, up to a time when, it reached in the early 2000s. Coming forward, the the meaning of, Pan Africanism actually began changing, and, it majorly focused on the African continent. So it was not much of the black race. It became much of the African continent, and that's where it lost its meaning, because when it became much of the African continent, we lost most of the bonds with the Caribbeans, those black from America and those from Europe. So it actually became an African affair. And by the time it is becoming an African affair, colonization had already ended, and we had been divided on the colonial borders. So you got to see, like, we had the Masai in Kenya and the Masai in Tanzania. Yes, they're all Masai, they speak the same language, but they were divided. So some had to leave, some were referred to as Tanzanians, and others were referred to as Kenyans. So by doing that, people no longer identify themselves as black, they identify themselves through the colonial colonial borders. So regardless of where one came from, regardless of being a black person, no people started not seeing themselves as blacks. So if the colony said you are in Uganda, you automatically became a Ugandan. So you are no longer black, you are no longer an African. And, some countries will go on to fight each other, of which is still evident. Tribalism, some people from other country restricting another African country. So this was all brought by the change in the meaning of Pan Africanism. And, as it stands today, Pan Africanism has really changed the meaning. But that does not mean that it carries the hope for the African youth. It
So
means,
so so do you just a small interjection, Simba? So
Yes.
do you agree with Ham earlier shared that he feels that Pan-Africanism doesn't seem to exist because the African man lacks a common identity? Do you agree with him, or you have a different perspective towards that?
I can say I slightly agree with him, and I slightly disagree with him. But in the end, in the
Sure, sure, sure.
in the end, it all comes down to that. Pan Africanism has actually lost its meaning. So that can be the conclusion. So I agree with him on that part. Uh,
Okay, okay then. So then, okay. So then, when it goes to the other part of my question, when I was asking,
yes.
what hope then lay? Because again, today you still have many people talking about Pan-Africanism. It's like the one thing that makes Africans come together most of the times is the word Pan-African. I've seen so many conferences, I've seen movements. When Black Lives Matter came up, we're talking about still Pan-Africanism. But I remember in that time when Black Lives Matter was happening, it seemed that Africans connected more to Black Lives Matter, which was happening in the US and the Western world. But when there are similar movements like that on this continent, people seem not to actually care because you even had xenophobia happening around that time. So this thing called Pan-Africanism and what it really looks to, like you've explained, what hope lies within it for the African youth in terms of economically, socially, and politically?
Actually, the Pan Africanism as it stands today is the only savior of the African continent. It is the only savior of the black race. Only that we have not yet fully realized what it means. And yeah, we have not actually realized what it really means. But how I wish we could understand what Pan Africanism means as Africans, everything could change in less than 6 months, and we will regain our rightful positions, we as Africans in this world. So, if I'm to answer the question, if it really carries hope, yeah, Pan Africanism, and it's not that it all carries hope, it's the only hope. It's the only tool that can change Africans. But the problem again lies in that the white people manage to brainwash us. So they manage to make us look weak, illiterate, all those sort of bad things. Because you can imagine if Africa is considered to be the mother of mankind, Africa is where our first civilization took place. That means that for civilization of which they call us uncivilized, it means that civilization started here. So how can we be uncivilized? But the thing is, I don't know how they managed to, but actually they managed to brainwash us. So we live knowing that we are the poorest, we are the weakest, all those sort of negative things about our continent. So we always despise ourselves. And the spirit, so media, everything contributes towards making sure that we continue being brainwashed. If you watch their movies, the roles most of us to take in their movies, nini, very weak roles. They take the superior, we take the less superior roles. So they have really managed to brainwash us. But if we can unite, we as Africans, because even in their countries, most of the inventions which they are proud of are Africans. Only that they they consider those few Africans as some of them. So you can imagine, like in our country, each year the topmost student in the secondary exams automatically gets a scholarship to one of the universities abroad and never comes back. They even offer re- citizenship. So those guys are really brainwashing us. That is the only way they are managing to make us Africans seem the way we are. And also the reason as to why Pan Africanism is not working again is the greediness of our leaders who only care about their stomachs. So they pass policies which don't favor we Africans. They get loans from there, yet we have a lot of raw materials of which when they are given some little money, they sell what belongs to us. So we always remain poor. We will always remain weak as long as those two issues are not addressed. But for me, I think Pan Africanism is the only way. It's the only way for Africans.
Yeah, great. Simba, where does your deep passion for Pan Africanism come from? I remember you once told me that in school they used to call you Marcus Garvey. When was your first exposure to Pan Africanism? When was it, and how did you fall in love with the whole concept? And you know, how did you learn about it? Where did you get that knowledge? And just give us that whole story of how you first interacted with it and became so passionate about Pan Africanism.
Um, Actually, it dates back to when I was in primary school. So, in our primary school, I used to learn in a private primary school. So, the sponsors who used to sponsor the our school were actually some Italian guys. So, that is where I first saw discrimination. Though, so I was just hearing that there is discrimination between the blacks and whites because we had some Italians and some Asians who we used to learn in the same school. Yeah, so actually I used to see how we were being discriminated, and that the people who are discriminating us, that is the whites, I couldn't see. I used to beat them in class. So in class in sports. So actually I used to ask myself, why do these guys proud themselves yet they cannot defeat me personally, a black man in anything, actually anything. So I carried that idea. Okay, actually, I asked myself that, and it ended in primary school. But as I joined the high school, we started learning deeper about the history. So there was a topic in when I was my third grade in high school about Pan Africanism. Yeah, it was a whole topic about Pan Africanism. So that's where now I started to understand the events that had happened to me in primary school, and I realized now the reason as to why we were being discriminated. So onwards after there, I used to walk barefoot in high school in advocating.
You had no shoes?
Yeah, without
Oh,
without no shoes. Yeah, barefoot. I used to walk barefoot because I realized that we used to have the most superior culture, the most superior beings in the world. So how comes we change? So my first step towards Pan Africanism was walking barefoot. I actually used to walk barefoot, and so the teachers will ask me and the students, "Why are you walking barefoot?" And I told them because I'm an African. So they would start wondering, "What do you mean by that?" And I used to explain to them my mind out. So they referred to me as a Pan Africanist immediately. And because by the time during that time we were learning about Marcus Garvey, so they just nicknamed me Marcus Garvey. And yeah, I really love that name. I carried it on throughout. So throughout the remaining part of my high school, I used to advocate for Pan Africanism, Africans for Africans. And I used to, because I was also the chairman for the debate and journalism club. So whenever we had a debate, I would make sure that I include Pan Africanism in any journalism article that we used to produce for the school. I'll make sure we include their Pan Africanism. Yeah, and that's how I developed the passion up to date.
Wow, wow, that's incredible. I can imagine, walking barefoot in school. I'm sure some people thought you were crazy, but that's deep. And I feel like such stories actually have to be told, for for those that believe in the concept or believe in Pan-Africanism, so that those others that do believe. But then I want to take you to something else. Ham mentioned something in his submission about how
Yeah, I can hear you now clearly.
the link can tend to really disturb.
That's why I was actually wondering.
Yeah, so what I was asking you is, Ham talked about how we have tribe formations, and we have how our people tend to still look back and hold on to the divisions that we have. For example, looking at tribes. In your personal opinion, when you look around yourself, when you look around from the debate club that you used to lead, and the people that your fellow students, I used to call you Pan African, and even your friends in university, but generally African youth, how do you think, or how do you see African youth identifying with Pan Africanism today? Do they actually identify with it? And if they do, how do they actually identify? What are those things that make young people identify with Pan Africanism today, in your opinion?
You know, sometimes back, I think it was early this year. I was sitting with one of my friends, and he told me that I'm not a Pan Africanist. So he was the first person since I ever declared myself a Pan Africanist to tell me that I'm not a Pan Africanist. So I had to ask him, why am I not a Pan Africanist? So he responded by telling me that I'm not African. Yeah, I'm not African. It's just that I'm black. So it became very challenging, and I was shocked. So I had to ask him, why am I not African? So he told me, from your dress code to your language, nothing is African. And I was more shocked because actually it was true. So he in fact told me I should stop misleading others that we should be Pan Africans. So that thing, it really hit me hard that I even became speechless. So I was really shocked. But I asked him uh, one very simple question. If I'm Yeah, because you say, okay, I told him actually I have no problem with the language because I know at least five African native languages, so I have no problem with the language. But if I were now to change to on the attires, let's say, how do you expect me to dress? Because finding those clothings actually is very hard. And he told me that there is no Pan Africanism. We are all a colonized version of Africa, or a colonized version of Africans. So we are not original. We are white to an extent. So I had to tell. I actually lacked answers, so I just went away. That was the worst experience I ever encountered. But actually, there are other people whom I have engaged with ever since I was in high school. they do respond positively. So there are those people who, when asked which tribe do you come from, they say, let's say, I'm a Maasai, but I can't speak Maasai in Maasai. So those are the people who I really engage with, and they respond positively because how can you? I usually ask myself, how can someone be able to speak a foreigner's language and be unable to speak his own? So
But actually, just a small question in there. Do you think that um, do you think tribes keep us divided, and do you think it's better to go with a big identity of nationalism or Pan Africanism, or should we getting rid of tribes, or do you think we should stay with our tribes and the identity of our tribes and just find a way of harmonizing and uniting even with those tribes in the equation?
uh, when asked such a question, it's I'll just give a very simple and a live example. Have you ever been to Tanzania? Of course, yes. Those people,
Yeah.
how do those people actually identify with tribe or ethnicity, any of those issues?
In Tanzania, it's, people will know that he or she is Meru, but you had like it's not the way we hold it in Uganda or Kenya, because I've been in those two places. It's like in Uganda and Kenya, being Meru comes before being Kenyan. You get my point of being actually comes before being Ugandan. But in Tanzania, it's being Tanzanian, and then Meru is just like that's where we come from. I come from as an individual, but I'm Tanzanian, so they are more subscribed to nationalism
So
than tribalism.
so when someone asks me if Pan Africanism can work, I usually give him the example of Tanzania. You know that you can stay with a Tanzanian for around a week and you will not realize which tribe he comes from. So unlike Kenya, because and I've never been to Uganda for that long, so I've never interacted much. But for Kenya, Kenya is worse. I don't think if Uganda can be better. I think, yeah. I, in Kenya is very hard for you to get any service, any, especially from a stranger. You have to identify with your tribe. So you have to say,
You have to tell them which tribe you are.
yes, first. So that someone can determine how he can help you. So even if you meet someone in the night, like you are stranded and you go knock someone's house, yes, he will just ask you from the doorstep. Majority of us, and he will ask you, where do you come from? So if you say I come from Lake Victoria, the next question that follows is, are you a Luo? So so that is that in Kenya, and I blame it from this issue came from all the way from the way we got independent. So the Kikuyu, the Kikuyu felt that they had fought more, so they deserved more of Kenya than the other 44 tribes. So we ended up losing it all the way from the beginning, because I was even shocked that
Mm.
Tanzania has more than 70 tribes, and we in Kenya have around,
Yeah, Tasman tribes.
and we in Kenya have less.
Mm.
But the tribalism here is more evident than there. So it's actually an issue of our leaders bringing cohesion. So if you're to ask me, because I don't think like I can't like I've been asking myself this, but I do forget to research. In a country like let's say England, do those guys actually have jobs like the ones we have here in Africa? Actually,
Do they have what?
Do they have tribes like ours here in Africa?
I think I've done a further study on Germany and more than any country in Europe anyway. But what I've said about Germany is Germany once had tribes, and it once had like almost 5 different states. You get my point.
Yeah,
But the evolution happened that they overcame the tribes. They went to unification and out of one Bismarck. Then of course they go through that 20th century. Then they have East and West, but it's been an evolution that today it's now all about being German and the German language. But even in the German language, there are variations. There is the most German that's spoken is that depth of back then, and sometimes it's hell bent on the tribes that existed. So when you go north of Germany, you will notice that there are older people who are hell bent on their tribes, and they will speak a certain way, the language. But the point is that they once existed, but an evolution happened. They overcame tribes and they became more nationalistic. And today it's about being German and speaking the German language.
that
So, yeah, I think, yeah.
so that's what I believe, and so people keep on telling me that it's impossible, but I usually tell them it's possible because it, I just use the simple example from Tanzania. It's very possible, and if we were to unite, because I can see also we are really trying very hard actually in bringing the Swahili as a common language in Africa. Yeah, it has started spreading, something that is very good. So I think if all countries maybe or majority of countries in Africa can adapt the Swahili language, at least it will be a positive sign of unity. But actually, I will advocate, if given the chance, I will advocate for nationalism, and I'll advocate for Pan Africanism and not nothing. So all those tribes should identify themselves as Africans, nothing more, just Africans.
Good, good. Moving on, Simba.
Yeah.
What, in your perspective or in your view, by the way, we've had A. There's a listener here called A. I hope he or she will say something at the end. Thank you for following and staying part of the space, regardless of our issues of network. But here, back to you, Simba.
Yeah.
From where you sit, what's the relationship between democracy and Pan-Africanism? And why I ask, I'll give you an example. Right now, there are demonstrations happening in Kenya and in South Africa, but I'll use Kenya as an example. Kenya is our neighbor. We, East Africa, I believe we are one people, one cluster of people. And I mean, the Ugandans that go to Kenya every day, come back here, same as some Tanzanians. But in that demonstration that's happening, one thing I've always noticed that is countries around Kenya within the East African community would tend to take sides. Even during the election, for example, many people I know supported Baba, then those supported Ruto. And I remember vividly in Arusha going to a small barber shop, and I found people surrounding a screen, following the IEBC results coming in. I saw people following the results, reading, the swearing, and all those things. So when you look at Pan-Africanism and democracy, what do you think is the relationship, and why is it that you find that some Africans feel like they want to, for example, be part of some struggles in other countries or support them, but the people in those countries tend to make them feel like you are not part of us. This is, for example, Kenyan business. This is, for example, Tanzanian business. People should mind your business. Don't you think that if we're able to support each other's struggles, that
Yeah.
could be a big break onto Afro-capitalism? And generally, do you think that two can go along, democracy and Afro-capitalism?
Actually, if I'll shock you about one thing is I don't believe in the word called democracy.
Uh-huh.
I know that is something that is really shocking you. Yeah, I actually don't believe in democracy because according to you, what is your understanding of democracy?
Well, the thing is, I share similar sentiments with you about democracy. And let me give an example. Last year, I was at a conference still in Arusha about democracy. And I remember challenging the guys that I attended, some of them that I interacted with, that, we are here discussing democracy for Africa. But I see elite people wearing suits, wearing nice clothes in here discussing democracy. But if you stepped out of this confines of this place and ask the Mama Mboga or the border guy out there what democracy does mean to them, and especially in a country like Tanzania where studies Swahili, you find that for them it means guys demonstrating, guys fighting for their rights. But the word democracy doesn't even exist in Swahili. So I remember saying that I think the African is more interested in governance, not democracy per se. And this democracy we talk about is something engineered from the Western world and something that still is foreign to the common African. It's more for the African elite, and it's something they use, for their own interest most of the times. And I think something also, Ham talked about it here a bit when he talked about how different countries kind of develop differently, but you find that even for democracy it works. We have not owned it as per se. So just to answer your question, Simba, I don't completely believe in democracy. I believe more in governance, and I believe that Africa, if we are to even use the concept of democracy, we ought to define it for our own selves and have our own understanding about it and how it can work for us, where we are, where we want to go, and where we have come from anyway.
Actually, democracy can never work for Africans because if they to make sure that we are so democracy is a European thing, and it can never be part of us actually. So that's among the parts in which they manage to make us become more weaker, because when they come, they founded us with kingdoms and chiefdoms, of which there was no democracy. There was no majority who will say no. It was the chief or the king will say this is the way to go through the advices of the elders, and that was the way people. No one will complain. No one will. No one. Most of the time, they wouldn't consult any other people, and I think we used to live harmoniously, and life was good. So,
but
when
isn't
those
that dictatorship?
no, they gave it a bad term, dictatorship. But actually, so when when you tell a person you are a dictator, the impression is already bad. So you are already a bad person even before you do anything. So when I say that when I tell my friend Frederick is a dictator, automatically you become bad. Of which that is not the case with the that is not supposed to be the case, because you can look at the example of Tanzania and Magufuli, and Libya and Gaddafi, the likes of Sankara in.
Just a quick one. So, what do you think about President Kagame's leadership, which most call a dictatorship? Do you, in your perspective, feel like that's how African countries should be led under such a kind of leadership?
Absolutely, but I've seen of late the whites have started taking. They have started infiltrating his decisions mostly, but before they started the intoxication, the guy was actually he was the best president according to me in Africa, because that's how you need to be strict. You need to be strict and honest. So that is where most of our leaders fail. You'll get that when a leader of which majority are not strict, they are just those honest. Yeah, they are not strict, so they don't stand rightful. They are cowards. But that is not the case with Kagame. He is a very strict and tough person. So when he says we move forward, not even the white could convince him. But I can see of late they've started convincing him. of which is not good. But actually, yeah, he's one of the best president because he is not intimidated by the West threats.
Yeah, and why I asked that is because you said that how our kingdoms and chiefdoms were run back then is you had a king, you had a chief, and he had people that advised him or her, and they led and they gave direction. So, do you feel like leadership under Kagame is a modern version or is a modernization of what used to be then? Is it the
Yeah,
modern African style of leadership that we should see?
yeah, absolutely. It is. It is. It is.
Okay. Okay, so back to my initial question, what's the relationship? Anyway, you don't believe in democracy, so I think we
Yeah.
shall say, what's the relationship between Pan-Africanism and different struggles for better governance across Africa? Or let me say, for this example, you have a struggle in Kenya where the demonstrations, and do you feel like such points Africapitalism can, when other countries tend to come out and support, let me say, that the demonstrations in Kenya, do you believe that
Yes.
in such moments we can see African unity being capitalized?
Actually, that is the perfect and the right time that we should now be seeing other countries fully supporting the demonstrations. That is the most perfect because that is the only way. So you see, when uh, when when say in the extended family, one house is fighting, and then the other relatives remain neutral. Actually, is that even is that even normal? Actually, it's abnormal. So I think what we are seeing now is abnormality because no one. I haven't had. I had Mama Samia the other day, and she was saying like she's coward. She does not. No. That is not Pan Africanism. That is not that is not love. That is not unity.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Um, the concept Pan-Africanism that you're talking about, it seems to be more prevalent, like more common amongst educated Africans and foreign Africans, those in diaspora. You, in your own words, if you found a border guy and you want to make him understand Pan-Africanism, how do you explain it to him?
Uh, an illiterate or literate.
Of course, he's illiterate. He's normal border guy. You're on a border ride with this guy, and for example, just like in this moment where there's a demonstration, for example, on Monday, and you find that there was Ugandans also trying to support the demonstrations and Tanzanians, and this border guy wants to understand why, and you want to explain to him that they're doing it because of Pan-Africanism. How do you explain to him what Pan-Africanism means in his illiterate way?
Um, I'll just explain it in a very simple, maybe one sentence. So I'll just tell him Africa for Africa. I think
Okay.
uh, I think I have not left any room for any further question. Africa for Africans.
Okay. You sounding like Ndidi Nyoro. Africa, we are Africans. Africa is our business.
Yes, we are Africans
Okay.
and Africans are business.
Okay. Let's go a bit inside terms of business and economics. I've always felt that one of the ways we can really build African unity today, especially, is building it upon economics. I mean, everyone wants to, you know, leverage in business, want to work. Uh, I hope you probably join the conversation again. But he talked about that example of you have Aliko Dangote creating jobs. He's based in Nigeria. He's creating jobs for many Africans across the continent. Do you believe or do you feel that if today as young people we focus on leveraging or pushing economics and business as a way to build African unity, how do you see that working out? And do you think it would be a good building block, or a tangible building block for African unity?
You know, it's funny how we are, but actually, we we already have the leverage because for anything, be it food, be it clothes, we need raw materials, and I don't think if we lack any raw material in Africa. So it's just a
Mm,
matter of it's just a matter of governance, and you'll agree with me that all these problems are brought by our leaders. Because you can see with the example of Congo, and not Congo,
mm,
Congo. Let's say Congo, they have around 200 to 300 different types of minerals, which are essential in most of the commodities we import. So, if we can leverage from there and tell the whites, those mining companies, no, we are not selling you this. We will harvest what we have, we will process it and sell you. Actually, is that not a very great breakthrough
mm,
economic?
mm,
So, yeah, so I think all those people, I just term them as hypocrites. Those
mm,
who claim to be creating job opportunities for us, they are all hypocrites, from the leaders to the very big businessmen. They are just
mm,
hypocrites. So I don't take any of their work seriously.
mm.
Yeah, because
Okay.
there are very better chances of them giving us
Mm,
than the ones they are
mm.
giving us. So yes,
Okay. Simba, we talked
yes.
also about education system, and I remember asking Ham uh, after his submission if he feels that most of the challenges we have today have to do a lot with how the education system has been. And I think I agree with him. And also, in your earlier submission, you mentioned it a bit, uh, how we educated about these things. But I mean, we're not in government here. We are not going to go and change the whole system tonight or tomorrow. But we are learned. We can speak to ourselves. We have internet, and we are exposed. We can read. How do you think, or what do you think we can do as young people today to, make a difference in the education system to liberate ourselves and leverage and find more ways of uniting? Because we agree that the education system has been designed to keep the African backward and divided. But what can we do about it today?
Um, Actually, it's very very simple, and it's just moving from theoretical part to practical part.
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as that because when you can see like I've been like the one here we use in Kenya.
Mm,
Um, I started learning at the age of 3 years.
mm,
So I have learned over the years until I'm completing high school. I had learned chemistry, I had learned biology, I had learned physics, mathematics, all those hard sciences of which I was not really actually interested in any of them. So
mm,
can you see that I wasted around 8 to 9 years learning very unnecessary things, of which still there are theories, nothing practical.
mm,
Yeah.
mm,
So if we need to move, if we need to move away from, if we need to improve in education and improve our status, we just need to one uh, be practical and stop being theoretical because you spend a lot of time learning about very unnecessary and useless things. While the curriculum of the Asians, the Europeans, and the Americans learn
mm,
what is actually needed. So we should actually move
mm,
from theoretical to practical, and also specialization should be from a very tender age. So if someone maybe reaches 10 years, he knows the basics. He can write languages. He can do basic mathematics. Let him specialize in what he loves or she loves. I think those are the two ways, of which 99% of African educational curriculums do not follow that way.
But then I'll see. But what can me and you do today? To help those that are still part of this education system to break free. And what can we also do to immunize ourselves against becoming victims? Because you're still in school. I'm also finishing up school. Harms is finishing up school, and many other young people. But even those that already work, people keep going back for masters. And like you said, whoever performs well in Africa gets a chance to study outside Africa and get citizenship. So what can we do to immunize ourselves today with what we know and what we're exposed to, to make a difference within there? I see Ham is going to be speaking, and also I don't know what's wrong with your Twitter. Maybe you can update it, but I've been allowing you to speak, but it goes off. Yeah, but Simba, have you got my question?
Yeah, I actually got your question. Yeah, you see, because as I was saying, the whitewash is really, really, really deep. It really entered us very deep. So coming out of that pitch down there, because we're the obese, very dark. As it stands, we don't know that we are the superior race. So we only have two options, of which the first one is our leaders. So if we get if let's say in Uganda you have a Pan African president or leader, that is a win, automatically win. Um, and then the other way is through the mass action, of which it will also be very difficult. The power of the people. So educating a lot of people from the enlightened people, actually as it stands, is less than 1%, or let's say 1% of the African population. So it becomes very hard to educate the remaining 99%. So we have a long way using that way, very, very long way. So I
Okay.
think the easiest way is just finding a president who is a Pan-Africanist.
Okay. Simba, I think I'll have concluding questions for you later on. Let's just hear what Ham has to say. And I
Okay.
think we should be able to conclude this in about 20 minutes. Ham, do you have something to say? You requested to speak.
Yes. Yes. I don't know if you guys can hear me clearly.
Yeah, we can loud and clear.
Okay, that's good. Yes, I do have a few things to say in response to what William has been saying. First of all, we need to stop looking at Pan Africanism or being black like some sort of like spiritual thing. Spiritual thing. I've been hearing some former speakers saying that we are the superior race, this and that. There is no superior race. Those are racist undertones. We are all in the genetic type. We are all Homo sapiens. Okay, we all have internally. We all have the same things, the same heart, the same kidney. The only thing which could be different is blood, and that's because of the environment. But internally, everything is the same. There's no such thing as superior race. That's the first thing. Second thing, uh, I think you asked a question about is it business? Something about business. How could they build the?
Yeah, I was saying, how can
Yeah.
we use business and economics as a building block for our unity as African people? Can we trade more together and use this to really get more united and connected?
Business is the way. There is no other way. No other way. Business and economics is the only way to develop this continent. I don't know. I am not fully aware of any other way that we could use. If there is any other way, someone could tell me, but no other way at the moment. So how do we use business? The first thing On this continent, we don't have infrastructure. We don't have infrastructure. Someone cannot move from Mombasa, which is on the eastern coast of this continent, that is the Indian Ocean, and drive to West Africa, the Atlantic Ocean, which is Congo. Yet these are just mere around 3 countries: Kenya, Uganda, Democratic Republic of Congo. Those are 3 countries. This should be something so small we should be able to do. We need to build infrastructure, but that is the government's work, not individual work. On top of that, we need to ease movement of people in terms of work, but also in facilities. Someone should be able to move and go to Kisumu from Jinja. Someone from Nakuru should move from Nakuru and go to Mbarara, and like that, vice versa. But how do we use our business to grow? In my opinion, I understand sometimes my ideas could be a bit too much fast forward thinking and a bit on the extreme end. But hey, if we are actually not joking and we're actually serious about this continent changing, we cannot go on the same way. So this continent has a lot of young people. Okay, the median age in Uganda is 14 years. It actually grew recently to around over 15 or maybe 14.8. So 14 years. In all African countries, African women are the number 1 entrepreneur on the continent. But most of them are doing small businesses, selling, working in either agriculture or selling produce in the market. Such things, selling tomatoes, things like that. So the government, every African government and the African Union needs to come out and set up a fund of maybe $2 billion, which will be able to support these women in every African country. But more important than that, I believe every African government needs to have what we call venture capital, but being in the state. I know when you are in the government, for those who have worked with the government or in the government, there's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy. Something in a business which you could do in 2 days in the government takes 2 months. For those who have worked with government, you know that if you're receiving payment from government, you ask for it in January 2022, you get it in January 2023. This one has to ask the other one asks this one, blah, 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 blah. But I hope that every African government, if they had the capacity to set up venture capital as a ministry or part of the ministry in every country, they specifically set it for young people, where young people can come and get capital. Okay? Young people come, they present their ideas, what they want to do. The government supports them. The government buys into those businesses.
We have something like that. We have something like that in Kenya. Ruto has set up the Hustler Fund. Do you think that's effective enough?
The Hustler Fund could be a very good start, but the main problem with African policies is that implementation, and we don't know what we are doing. I don't know what the details of the Hustler Fund, the loan details, how you get it, the requirements, how you repay it, or because he's a politician, he could just be doing it for politics. But if African governments are able to do it and also implement, I don't know why African governments are very good at planning, writing documents, printing documents, talking about documents, campaigning about documents. But when it comes to the actual groundwork of doing what needs to be done, because we actually know what needs to be done, we don't end up doing it. But we talk about it. So if they can actually do that, we can do. We need to support entrepreneurs all across the continent. Recently, when you've spoken about Afande Ruto, when Afande Ruto was going, Aliko Dangote came to Kenya to set up a rice factory. I don't know, but it seems there were some people in the government, they didn't like it. They fought him, he went. But this is a person who could employ jobs. This is a person who could set up capital. This is a person who can set up banks. Another point I'd forgotten, as we build businesses on the continent to drive economic growth, we need locally owned banks in every African country. For those who are listening outside Uganda, in Uganda, we don't have any locally owned bank. We don't have any locally owned bank. Every bank is owned mostly by European companies, meaning the profits go back. Okay.
What
Then we have
about
a
Centenary Bank in Uganda? It's locally owned.
Yes, Centenary Bank is owned, but it's a one-off. I think it's not enough. We need more. For Uganda, we need like 30 locally owned banks. 30. So Centenary is a drop in the ocean, but it is doing tremendous work. It's a good start. They have begun well once we are to go. For Kenya, I think you'll need like 40 or 50. For South Africa, we need like 100. And we need banks which can grow to large sizes and proportions, which have large customer deposits, banks which are dedicated to businesses. Banks which are dedicated to businesses. All banks in Uganda, by the way, including Centenary Bank, they have a foreign hand in them. A certain percentage is owned by foreigners. Most of we for us business people we refer to it as white multinational capital. White multinational capital is capital, mostly comes from the United States, and it keeps moving. It goes away. Now, like it keeps moving, but now if it's locally owned, it can stay in the country. It stays there. So Uganda, we need more. Kenya, we need more. And also we need different kind of banks. We need banks that are dedicated to large customer deposits. We need banks which are dedicated to manufacturing. I'm not sure about the whole continent. I don't want to speak things I don't know. But for Uganda, a small example we have is Bank of Baroda. It's a manufacturer's bank. Okay, so most of their loans they go into you want to buy a mill, you want to buy a factory, such things. So we need those different kinds of banking institutions all across the continent, depending on what they are doing. So all we need all those things. I don't know if you guys heard recently of SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, which was dedicated to startups in the US, but of course most of them are in California. We need such a thing in Africa, and we need like maybe 10 of them. We have I think Kenya takes the largest share of venture capital on the continent. So if we could have a Silicon Valley Bank type in Kenya, like 2 of them, it would really boost growth. Then another one in Nigeria, another one in South Africa. But so we need such things to afford us cheap capital. Also, we need to work on our stock exchanges for them to grow. Most of our exchanges are not working. Some of them are for sure. So and those there are some which are doing well, but people don't know so much about them. They are the capital markets. So we need them the governments to educate people. We need the government to force some large companies to list shares. In those countries, recently, the government of Uganda told MTN to issue shares on the Uganda Stock Exchange and Airtel, but they are being dilly-dallying about it. MTN issued by the Airtels and the others are being taking long, yet it's over the time period that they gave them. So we need those capital markets. One thing we lack because I think for those who know, the first fundamental of any business is capital. Capital. We shall sing that song until Jesus comes home. So there is no person. I don't know for you, those guys who know Raymond Mujuni. He's a journalist at NTV, a newspaper in Uganda, newspaper and TV channel in Uganda, but also Kenya and the Daily Nation. He asked a question. He asked a question on Twitter asking, how many locally born Ugandans have capital? And the answer I can tell you is none. There is no Ugandan who actually has capital. By capital, I'm talking about we set up if we're moving this continent, set up a enterprise of $10 million, $20 million, large things. We need to start doing big things. We can't start like a 50k Ugandan shillings, suppose shilling 1,000. No, please. Shilling 1,000 will not move this continent. We need large streams of capital and stop the dependency on white multinational capital. The things are many, but that's what I can say for now. To your
Good.
question.
I think next week we shall have a space to talk about bridging Africa through business. I think William, you respond to Ham. Let's first hear what A has to say, and then we shall conclude with William to respond to Ham, but also to give his final submissions. But Ham, you make very interesting points. I've been taking note. And just to remind everyone on the space that this is a recorded space, and we usually upload the recordings on YouTube, so you can go on and take some notes from what you've heard that's interesting. Because Ham, you made a really powerful submission, and I've taken some notes personally. Let's hear from A.
Well, first of all, good evening. And I just want to know, is everyone Ugandan over here or what?
Yeah. What did you say?
All of you. I'm asking,
What did you say?
are all of you
Yeah.
Ugandans?
We have Ugandans and Kenyans and Tanzanians,
Oh,
but
okay.
the Tanzanians left earlier on.
Okay. Well, okay, see, my name is Emmanuel Tongon, and I'm South Sudanese and Ugandan, you know. So, how can I say this? I'm studying at Isbert University. I am pursuing a degree at networking and cybersecurity. And this issue of Pan-Africanism, or should I say this space, is really interesting. Well, I actually like to hear before speaking, so I'd like to say that from Ham, really, I've heard very powerful points, well thought out points actually, and I'm actually learning a lot from what I'm hearing. So what I can say is, you asked a question before. You said, what is Pan-Africanism to me, or to you, to any one of you? Well, to me, Pan-Africanism to me is a conversation. That's what I can say. And before I continue, I hope all of you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you both.
Clearly? Ham?
Yeah, we can hear you. You said Pan-Africanism is a conversation.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
we're getting you loud and clear.
Okay. So, for me, how can I say this? It's about the pillars of society, of African society, and how many of them have been influenced by Western culture or left behind by colonialism. Because as we know, the pillars of society are the human person, family, economics, law, and education. And when Ham said that there's no such thing as Pan-Africanism, really, it's I have to disagree with that. But I understand what you're saying. For me, what I understood from what you said when you said that there's no such thing as Pan-Africanism is that I think you're trying to make us aware of how bad things really are, because Pan-Africanism is it's a really, how can I say, it's really complex, because we're so far behind in terms of where we're supposed to be at the moment. And when it comes to these things of the pillars of society, I'd like to emphasize or talk about education, really. And for me, an educated African is a powerful African, if you guys can understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, we get you.
Okay, so my point is, first of all, it has to be, we have to educate ourselves on our history. And I mean our true history. And what do I mean by that? Because right now, from what I see so far, is that everything that an African knows about himself is it's about either post-colonialism or slavery. Is one of the two. either you're colonized by the white man, or you were a slave to white man. That's all people talk about. That's all people really actually believe, to be honest. But my question is, okay, what happened before slavery, or what happened before we're colonized by the British, or let me say by the Europeans? People don't really talk about what happened before, and the history that really supports African greatness or African achievements really is almost non-existent. As a matter of fact, it's so difficult to find and also educate yourself on what your ancestors did before everything. Because right now, the main history of the world is all about, it really, to be honest, it's all about white victories and black losses. That's the easiest way I can say. I hope you guys can get my point.
Yeah, we get you, my brother. We get you.
Okay. So first of all, there are a lot of things about education, and especially about what are being taught in schools from the very first years of our lives. We're being taught things like how a white man, let's say, discovered the Nile. Okay, and they say his name was John Hanning Speke, I believe. And what I was taught in school is that he is the one who discovered the Nile. And for me, my argument now is that how does that make any sense? Because my ancestors were swimming in the waters that he explored, that he discovered. So tell me, who really discovered what? Like, to be more fair, I would say it's like the first European to come to Africa, or so. Or should I say the first documented European to see the Nile? And that makes more sense if you say it that way. But when he's saying that, he discovered the Nile, it's like saying like there's no one else before that. And there's a lot of, I think that if Africans can really educate themselves on Africa's true history, I think it's like a really big step forward, if you guys can get what I'm saying. Because a lot of things, how can I say, from my observation of our people, I feel like our people look down on themselves, because when they look at their history that is almost non-existent at the moment, they look down on themselves because they're like, what have my ancestors done? What have they really built, or what have they really achieved? And if they've done nothing, it means I am capable of doing nothing. And I think that's the mentality of many Africans these days. And for me, I've made my research in a way, and I've come to realize that Africans were actually the founders of civilization. We're the people who civilized the whole world. We're the first people to extract metals from the ground, to form weapons and pottery, and we're the first people even to domesticate cows and sheep and goats, for milk and meat, and we're among the first people who have like the first universities were in Africa. And we need to understand that really African youth, should I say, okay, our age mates, or even people who are still in school, they should really be educated on the empires of Africa. For example, the Mali Empire, the Ghana Empire, the Kush Kingdom, the Ethiopian Empire, And if we can teach them a lot about what our people achieved, then hopefully it will really change their minds in many ways, and they start to look at themselves as people who have great capacity instead of looking down at themselves. So that's what I can say.
Thank you, my brother. I think let's have William lastly, then we shall call it a night. William, first of all, your response to Ham's submission. And I'll have just 2 more questions for you, then we shall call it a night. Can you hear me, Simba? Simba?
Yes, I can hear you very loudly and clear.
Yeah. So just your response to Ham's submission. And I will just have 2 more questions for you, and we shall call it a night, and we round up. I think you heard him. Do you have anything in response, or should we just move?
Actually, I had an issue with the, but there is something I hadn't put it clearly. As it stands now in Africa, around 60 to 80% of the population just live to survive. I mean, like 60 to around 80, they have a problem with putting food on the table, if I'm not wrong. So because of that, what I think we should be focusing more on food security than business. So if I ever become a leader today, I'll focus on food security, because for one to think about business, he has to have eaten. So, and that is what is disturbing most of the Africans as it stands now. Most Africans cannot afford complete
How do you
meal.
work out the food security equation?
It's by because in Africa we are blessed. We have majority of the land is arable. We have at least 2 seasons per year, fertile land. So I think we should focus on giving the government should focus on giving out the fertilizers, the seed, and teaching people more of agriculture than business. I think that's the best approach we can use for us to achieve food security, because that is the first step towards greatness. You can never do anything on a hungry stomach.
Okay, fine. Just before I forget, there's a book I'm going to give Ham to read, just to complement his thought. It's called, I think also, I already have a copy for Simba. It's called Africa Must Unite by Kwame Nkrumah. I have a copy for Simba, a special coffee, but then I'll also get one for Ham. I'll probably then my brother here, but for Ham in particular, I will get you that copy. So Simba, as we conclude, actually, I've been talking about books. You read about Pan Africanism, I know. Do you have any recommendations of books on Pan Africanism that you think young people should read or look out for? Maybe sources of knowledge where young people can go and learn more about African history. The previous speaker talked about the importance of us getting education about our history. Any books you can recommend, or any places you feel people can find that knowledge?
I have very many books, but very many, around 50. But because actually this will be good for those who don't actually love reading, one, and those who like reading interesting books. So if you really want to be into Pan-Africanism, the books that I can recommend you start with for you to get the motivation for knowing more about Pan-Africanism, then you can find the books by the late Chinua Achebe, specifically Things Fall Apart, and Ant Hills of the Savannah. I'll
Okay.
really, I would really recommend those ones.
Okay. And who's your biggest Pan African icon or role model, and why? You in particular.
My biggest Pan African role model is Thomas Isidori Sankara.
What makes Sankara your biggest icon?
Actually, it's how he managed to bring out the idea of Africans for Africa in a short period of time with a lot of positive results.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So, lastly,
Yes.
today let me talk about East Africa, because the good thing here we have East Africa, we have South Sudan, we have UG, we have Kenya, and we had Tanzanians mostly on the space. So if you look at our leaders today across East Africa, the Pan community, the reality is 30 years from now things could look a lot different, because some will probably be aged, and even those in opposition,
Yes.
where do you see Africa, or let me say, where do you see East Africa 30 years from now, and how do you see Pan-Africanism then 30 years from now? How do you see it? Do you think it will play an instrumental role in our development, or do you think it will be phased out? And or do you, if it's going to play an instrumental role, what role will it play, in that 30 years from now? And how do you think things will really be then?
In the next 30 years,
Mm,
actually, Pan Africanism will have grown more than double as it is now. And 30 years from now, Pan Africanism, East Africa will be the will be the will be the biggest economic hub in Africa. Most of the other regions will be looking towards East Africa as their role model, as their determinant. The way we look at the US dollar as the determinant for our currencies.
okay. Okay. Just one last question. You said Pan-Africanism would have doubled. How do you see that? How do you see that happening?
Because I have personally seen Pan Africanism grow, because
Mm,
it is different from how when I joined first year the campus. It was totally different from how it is today. Totally different. Totally different. As in, quite a significant number of people has started joining, has started realizing that the destiny, has started realizing the potential of we Africans. So
okay.
that's how I see it is going to grow, and it is growing.
Okay. So guys, really big thank you for everyone that stayed with us till this time. It's been a hectic space, but very thankful to you gentlemen specifically for staying still now. Just something small I had to say. Personally, I'm not only Pan-African, but I'm also Afri-capitalist. So some of the things, and Afri-capitalism really talks about the power Africa's private sector, or Africa's population has in building social wealth and general wealth for Africa. That if we, for example, are into business, whatever we are into that produces income, we have the power of investing back in our communities, building social wealth, and really owning up our economy. So Afro-capitalism, for me, I used to believe it's really a big thing that we have to put along Pan-Africanism moving forward, because even if you talk about food security, it also goes back to the economics. If there's food in Uganda, how do we get it to Kenya? There has to be logistics, which goes back to also economics. So it's a lot we can talk. It's a really interesting topic. Probably we shall talk more about it some other time and invite all of you guys. But a big thank you, and I hope that all of us can play our different roles and responsibilities in moving Africa in our different capacities, because alternatively or realistically, we are the generation that can turn things around. But very much so, we have to have a common mission, and we have to work hard to turn those things around. Yeah, those are my parting shots. Simba, I can give you parting shots. Ham too, and and we can call it a night. Asante sana for me. Simba, give your parting shots and we can call it a night. Then we can also hear from Ham and then we just round up. Just your parting shots, my brother.
All that I can say is I'm really happy to at least have gotten this platform to share with what I had in my mind. And I
Actually,
think
you can give us a great quote by your Pan-African icon.
the late John Pombe Magufuli once said that the future of any nation lies in the youth who have strong vision and great health.
Great.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Sure. So. How do you have parting shots? I think Ham is off. Do you hear us?
I can hear you.
Any parting shots?
The only thing I can say is that every generation has to discover its purpose, and they have to carry out their purpose. So this current youthful African generation, our forefathers, they fought colonialism to get independence. From then up to now, it has been mostly just keeping peace, and the truth is just being around there, but it has gone into a state of comfort. But so our generation is to discover its purpose, and its purpose is to do the work to make Africa great. We need to stop living in some sort of euphoria where we think Africa is going to be better just by thinking about it, just by having strong emotions, just by having feelings, by wishful thinking. We need to stop this thing that the white man brain has brainwashed us, has done this and that. He did those things, he's still doing them. But unlike the 1700s, 1800s, we are better equipped by being better prepared, though most of the continent is still not educated, is still not exposed, is underfed, is dying from diseases, is dying from stupid things like cholera, malaria, which honestly, we as Black people, we a joke, so we cannot say we are superior race. When our people are dying from cholera, our people don't have shoes to go to school, and then we say we are superior race. No, we are jokers.
But that doesn't mean we are a joke.
It means really we are jokers. You cannot you cannot be in charge of a country for 40 years. Kenya cannot celebrate independence of 60 years plus, while most children cannot afford five big fair books. No, please, that is total rubbish. And then we say we are race. So, but my last comment is, if we really want to go where we need to go, we must put in the work. We need We need modern day liberators. We need teachers. We need people in the field of business. We need business people. Not only business people, we need people who actually know what they are doing in business. For those who have been seeing China, Chairman Jinping has been in president for around 20 years. China has grown its GDP per capita from around $1,000 to now $20,000. Right now, a Chinese earns more money than most people in Eastern Europe, than Portuguese, than those Croatia. It's very accurate. It's now like only 10 nations that earn more money than China in terms of GDP per capita. So to get there where we want to go, building infrastructure, feeding children, high quality education that matches China and the United States, coding, STEM, building hospitals, schools, all these things, guys, the work must be done. It won't be easy. It won't be a lot of sweat. There will even be blood. Some people have to die. That's the truth. But we need to stop wishful thinking. We need to stop saying this guy is undermining us, undercutting us. We need to do the work. We need to do the work. It won't be easy. There will be losses, but we need to do the work. That's all I can say.
We need to do the work. Big statement. Hey, you have a parting shot? Oh, I don't know. I think he can't hear us. Any parting shots, eh? Okay,
what I can say is, yeah, I actually learned a lot from you guys today. So I can say thank you, and I guess good night.
Yeah, so guys, we do this every Thursday night from 8 p.m. Today is our longest space ever. Our space is usually done by 9 minutes past 9 p.m. But yeah, today has been a great conversation. Hopefully we shall have Ham back. And A and William, you guys have good insights, and continue have to have these conversations and in everything anyway, because it cuts across. William was our main speaker. He had issues with his Twitter earlier on, but thank God we made it. Yeah, guys, thank you so much. Have a good night, and yeah, we need to put in the work, like Amma said. Good night.